Hey everyone, welcome to Wessex Ways, episode 23. I'm Hedley. Who are you, Paul?
I am Paul.
I brought my geography teacher with me. Roll the music.
Oh God! One
Yeah,
day, I mean, it's only episode
yeah,
23. I think by like
yeah.
50 or 60, we're going to really nail the introduction. But
We are, aren't
we've
we?
got time
We
on our
are.
hands.
Yes, are we? But I still think we're better than we started when it was scripted
I
completely. If
agree
you
with
see
that
what I mean.
entirely. Headley, let's talk more about your geography
Let's
teacher that
talk.
you mentioned,
I'm feeling really bad about that. I'm
as
so
you should.
sorry. We, as everyone knows, we do have a very special guest on today. He's I'll introduce him. In fact, let me get him to introduce himself. Who have we got with us today?
Hi. I mean, probably those of you who watch any of my YouTube stuff will know me as Tweedy, if you've seen it. My real name is John. Please feel free to use that instead. The channel, I guess, which has best overlap with this channel is called Tweedy Outdoors. I do a mixture of sort of walking, wild camping, but it has a sort of healthy dose of ancient history, and I like to just do it all in my own way, which is wearing tweed, drinking burgundy, trying to do a bit of outdoor cooking in there, and yeah, it's like my own unique take on outdoorsy stuff, I guess.
And this is why I love it so much, because there's thousands of people who do outdoor videos, aren't there? Avebury, this, that, and the other, and North Wessex Downs, but none of them have got that sort of character, the defined character you've got with, as you say, wearing tweed and drinking. Is it Chevrolet Chambertin is
Yeah,
your
yeah, absolutely. I
I
haven't
thought
opened
you
it,
might.
actually.
I
I don't know
thought
if we're
you
going to do
might.
a big sort of wine opening moment at some point.
And you're cooking. You're actually what you managed to cook in the middle of a hedge in the rain on the downs is pretty impressive stuff, isn't it? I mean, you're vegetarian, aren't you? But
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the dishes you produce are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm one of those vegetarians who grew up eating meat, so I only turned vegetarian as an adult. So my like a lot of dishes I cook are sort of they're essentially I'm trying to make a sort of classic meat-based dish, but in a sort of
Mm.
a vegetarian version of it, and then to make life even harder, try to do that in a hedge or in a ditch.
I mean,
Do you, you
last
are
week
you
last week was a great example. I think it was at the South Downs, and
Yeah,
I was thinking to myself, my God, he's not wearing any gloves. And he just said it's like, yeah, he's up on the South Downs, and I'm just thinking, and then like within 10 minutes, or within a couple of minutes, you said, "Oh, I can't really feel my left hand at the moment. It's gone numb. There's a little bit of pink in there, but I can't really feel it." And I'm thinking, "Oh my
I think
goodness me,
he's got a sort of a stoic British approach, because you
yes,
could see the light was going down. You could see it was going to be sub-zero. Anyone else, I think, would have been rushing to get into the warmth of the train, but not John. He gets out of the cooking apparatus. I'm like, surely not now. And you did.
yeah. I
You
mean, it's not even like it's not even about the video actually. Cases like that, I want the full experience, and so I really wanted to see the sunset, and I wanted to be there in that kind of fading light, and so yeah, that kind of that sort of doggedness. It's it's not because I think this is going to be a failure of a video, but like the stuff that I do on my channel, I would have been doing anyway.
Mm,
yeah,
I was already, everyone would say this, of course. No one would openly say, yeah, it's all a gimmick. I'm wearing kind of hoodies and t-shirts in real life and drinking Buckfast. But
mm,
this is actually just how I would want to be enjoying the outdoors anyway. And I just
yeah.
happen to be filming it. So that kind of bloody mindedness of I'm going to stay here until I've got something to eat. It's that's what I would have done if the camera
Mm.
wasn't rolling as well. I was I afterwards I felt a little bit embarrassed about that because I like to think I have a vague. No, I'm definitely not a Paul Messer. I don't know if you watch any
I
outdoors
do. Yeah.
channels.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely not an outdoorsy expert or anything like that. But I like to think I have a reasonable grasp of the basics, and
Yeah.
I think that there are some basics, like you can't get a pan of water to boil at 0 degrees. If the ambient temperature is 0 degrees, you have to just, either reduce the amount of water you'll go to boil, or you need very good sort of wind insulation. There's a lot of sort of basics. I don't know. I was remembering them as I was sat there on the hill. I guess I was being reminded of, basic physics of, how much more energy it's going to take to bring a litre pan of water up to a boil in 0 degrees with a wind and all that kind of stuff.
Followed by a steep descent down a clay slope in the dark. So I mean, Warren Brand, who's hopefully, well, he's an upcoming guest on here. He was asked, he does similar sort of outdoor adventures and he was asked, does he do it for YouTube or does he do it for himself? And he made a couple of videos on that, and he couldn't really get to the bottom of it, because he does it for himself. He likes going out and doing these adventures, and he's collecting memories, that he can look back on and living life, basically. But at the same time, he's doing it for YouTube because he wants to present it to people, and he wants people to come along for the experience. And so it's kind of the impossible question, I guess. But
I mean, like, big part of it was hoping I'd meet like-minded people, and I've met Mr. WC21 that way. It's a sort of absolute match made in heaven. Where else in life am I going to find another vegetarian tweed-wearing YouTuber who has an interest in outdoorsy stuff and antiquarian issues? There are only 2 of us, I think, in existence. And through the magic of YouTube, we've sort of become friends and stuff. So I'm basically done now. I've achieved everything I want out of YouTube. That's probably my last video. So
so that's fantastic. And what we'll do in a bit, where we'll come to your other channels, because you're not, as you say, it's not just Tweedy Outdoors. You have many fingers in many pies, and present a lot of different.
The outdoors one was absolutely the start of it all, and I didn't plan to have kind of a couple of different channels doing very different things, but it just sort of grew out of it as a kind of side project, and actually, I mean, in terms of raw numbers, that's doing a lot better than the outdoorsy channel. But my real sort of, my heart is still in the outdoors channel. That's the thing that I do purely for fun, and the pubs channel starting to feel a tiny bit like work. I'm sure, Paul, you've had this sort of transition at some point from when it was something that felt completely like a hobby to something that probably does feel like work. But I'm hopefully you're still enjoying it. But the way I approach those videos is quite different, I think, now from how I do the outdoors.
It's good to have both, then, isn't it? Really, because you get yourself, as you say, you get yourself into this rut's the wrong word, but this. The way of filming those videos, and you think, well, I can't really change that now because it's doing this for me. So to have that other outlet where you can just do what you're doing because you love it and you enjoy it is obviously is a good thing, really good thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, two videos ago, it was on the Outdoors channel. I did a video about the wassail at Wobblegate Cider down in Sussex, and I put a disclaimer at the start saying this video contains Morris dancing and cider, because I know both of those are things that are sort of, even divisive is probably the wrong word. A lot of people will just, there's a standard thing about, you had a terrible experience with cider as a 16-year-old and you can't stand the stuff now as an adult, and also, Morris dancing is not something that is universally loved. It's quite often derided. But on the outdoorsy channel, the audience is really nice. It's a small crowd, and they'll go along with it. Whereas on the pubs channel, I feel like there's a bit more of a I don't know, a standard to maintain or something. It's a different sort of I feel like I have to sort of deliver a certain sort of thing in a certain sort of way. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy it, but it is quite a different way of working.
So you've got a train ticket to anywhere. It's the last day on Earth, and you're going to do your last video. Obviously hypothetical. I'm not, dictating some awful thing that's about to happen. But just to clear that up, what location do you think you would choose? And what dish do you fancy making?
Yeah, I mean, I've been anticipating a question like this because I worry it's a little bit like, when you're teenagers and you meet another bunch of teenagers and you're talking about your favorite bands and you're trying to sort of think of like, what's the not too mainstream thing that's going to make me sound cool, but not too obscure that you're never going to have heard of it. But I'm sorry, it's a really obvious and boring answer, but Avebury there's so much there, and the surrounding landscape. and just the sort of the feeling it generates, the kind of the sense of there's a word I really love, atavism. I think a lot of what I do, I'm in search of atavism. It's a bit hard to pin down, but it's the sort of idea of being there back at the dawn of time, this sort of magical feeling of and you get that sort of at dawn sometimes and at sunset sometimes in those particularly special places, this sort of complete feeling of detachment from the modern world. And I guess if we're on the brink of the apocalypse, then probably a sense of detachment from the modern world is probably
I like to think we're probably a few weeks away from that, but depending on anyway, look, but I've had, I mean, actually funny you should say that, because Sam Walks a Lot, who was a previous guest on here, is taking me from my belated birthday walk, and we're going to be getting to Avebury in the middle of the night to get to West Kennet Long Barrow for sunrise, and then throw the drone up and everything. And that was all my choice, basically where we go, what time and everything. And I think she probably wishes she hadn't asked now, but yeah, I can't wait to see Avebury in the dark and then see the sunrise over West Kennet. And there's something kind of evocative about that, as you say, of so many other people would have seen the sunrise there over thousands of years, and and you think everyone looks to the past there, but you think, well, actually, West Kennet Long Barrow is probably going to be there thousands of years into the future, and people are going to be thinking back to us. So you sort of think ahead as well. As it's it's almost like it's a, as you say, it's a timeless place. A bit, Uffington's very similar as well. And
the sort of expanses of time between those monuments. So is it something like 1,000 years between West Kennet Long Barrow and the sort of the principal stone circle at Avebury? So it's like the distance between here and the Norman conquest. Think about what's changed in our modern history, and that one site has that, and the people who were building the stone circles would have looked at the West Kennet Long Barrow in the same way we look at sort of Norman churches now. They would they would seem as distant in the past, and possibly as sort of culturally alien. This sort of might have actually been a completely distinct, I don't think we know for sure, but completely distinct culture that had been working on that versus that.
Paul did a great video on the Ridgeway, and you think about the age of the Ridgeway being roughly 5,000 years old, probably more like a series of paths rather than a single path, but or ant trails, I think is the way it's described. But then you think, okay, right, so you've got hill forts along there, and the hill forts are just over a couple of thousand years ago. Well, that still leaves a 3,000 year gap. We're closer to the birth of Jesus by a big margin than we are from when the Ridgeway was made. And similarly, between the hill forts and the Ridgeway is 3,000 years, which is 1,000 more than the hill forts to now, sort of thing. And it's very difficult. It's sort of the kind of scale that you can't really comprehend. It's all part of one landscape, and it's difficult to
that's one of the things I struggle with the most, I think, even when dealing with one subject, whether it's railways, canals, or Roman roads or whatever, is Roman roads, well, okay, well, they were here 400 years or 350 years or whatever, and to just almost take it out of the context that you see it is such a difficult concept. I was looking at a few weeks back, looking at two Roman roads which are almost parallel, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, what am I even talking about? I'm looking at a 400-year period. Go back to, that's like us going back to the 1600s and saying, why did they have two roads next to each other in the year 1600 and the year 2000? Well, it's a completely irrelevant question, and I struggle with that quite a lot. But
So
should we? I think Avebury has so much that and the atmosphere of the place, and the sort of the freedom to wander around. I don't want to sort of don't want to diss Stonehenge, but it just the way that you can access the site as an individual is so hugely different. And I have been on the tour of Stonehenge, and it was great in its own way, but it's such a different experience from being able to spend if you want to, you can sit for 24 hours non-stop in the stones at Avebury. No one's going to move you on.
No,
I don't think I've done quite full 24 hours, but I've sat there for hours and hours on end. And you're free to get right up close to the stones and spend as long there as you want, to be there any time of day. I think that sort of freedom of access just makes the experience vastly different from any other sort of more managed site.
And it's the scale of it as well. I mean, I see Avebury as, the actual henge itself as 4 different parts. There's kind of 4 segments of it, divided quite neatly by the road system rather. And, bits of it are quieter than other bits. I mean, it's actually not a bad pub either, let's face it. But, and the whole sort of area, the heritage area that extends out down the avenue to the, East and West Kennet Long Barrows and, the Sanctuary, and obviously Windmill Hill to the north. I mean, it is, the whole area is, you can walk around most of it in a day, but you can't take it all in a day. And I think what you're talking about, to truly appreciate the place, live and breathe the place, it's more than a cursory visit, isn't it? You need to sit down, be there, absorb what's happening, and really take it in to make a memorable experience. So
yeah, and see it in different lights and different times of day. And one of the most magical times I was at Avebury was winter solstice one year, and I walked along the avenue, the West Kennet Avenue, just before dawn, and it's just really incredible. Sort of this word atavistic. It's sort of
yes, because
it without the light, all of the sort of signs of modernity were completely edited out. I couldn't see the road, I couldn't see the houses off in the distance. I was facing away from the village, and none of those things that normally remind you, yes, we're still in the 21st century, were visible. And it's spectacular. I think experiences like that make Avebury a very special place, I think.
And it means a lot to so many. I mean, our exhibition was centered around Avebury and the Milk Tan Hill area as well, partly because we're friends with the landowners there, but it's those 2 areas are the 2. I mean, for the exhibition we visited all parts of Wiltshire, photographing it over just over 2 years. But now that's over, the 2 places I return to are Avebury and Tan Hill the whole time. And Avebury's just got this kind of, as you say, it's kind of just some sort of, something about it is some sort of character that's just there. It's almost got a presence, it's really, really, yeah. Okay, that's a good answer to that question.
Well, it's a bit for a Wessex-based podcast. It's a very obvious answer, but it is. Place, I just couldn't really.
That's people are here for that. That's great. It's so Paul.
Hi.
100K.
Yeah. I've forgotten.
Tell us about your.
Completely forgot about it. If I'm honest with you, Hedley.
Now, which stadium? Of course, you forgot. Yeah, don't forget about it. What stadium have you filled? Have you worked it out?
Well, I don't know. I've got a good friend who often tells me when I get a certain video goes to a certain viewership. He'll tell me what I've just filled in terms of stadiums, and I do remember the heady days of filling the Dell and other such local stadiums. I don't know. We must be over the whole. Is there a stadium in Pyongyang, North Korea, that claims like 100 and something? I don't know.
Wow, quite. Yeah. There's no answer to that, really, is there? So okay. So there's a verification process. You get some kind of plaque, which hopefully is going to go up behind you there. For the podcasts, and so you're actually 101 now, aren't you?
101. Do you know what? It's been such a mad 3 months on the channel, because it feels like only 5 minutes ago that we were sort of stuck at 86, and 86 to 87 took like 2 months or something. It was really slow, and then the last 3 months we've had a couple of big videos, and they really bumped the numbers up. And daily we were getting like 400 new, 500 a day. I'm thinking, crikey, this has really crept up, and all of a sudden we're at sort of 97, 98. And I was chatting with yourself and Paul Timlett, wasn't I? And we were sort of looking at the numbers, trying to predict when the big 100 was going to happen. But yeah, I think it was this time last week or somewhere.
Yeah.
And,
no, congratulations.
Tipped over the 100. I've applied. It takes about 3 or 4 days, but 3 or 4 days after that, you can then. They have to verify a few things, like you haven't had any community strikes, you haven't had, you've uploaded more than 6 videos in 7 months or something bizarre. But no, just this morning I was able to apply for the plaque this morning. Very exciting.
Well, you see, you got to 99. No, so you got to 99,990 something, and Paul Timlett and I started a unsubscribe from Paul Whitewick campaign just to try and prolong it a little bit, or get you hovering above and below.
Yeah, it came up as a
but,
suggestion on
I fell.
change.org. Hedley Thorneh has started a campaign.
Guess how many signatures we got? 100,000.
Hooray!
Actually, 99,990. So what else have you been up to this week, Paul? Anything interesting?
I've been doing a bit of filming lately because we had a really good few days, didn't we? Sort of Friday, Saturday, this week just gone. We had a lot of blue sky, albeit very cold. We had a lot of blue sky, and I've been filming a couple of videos about. I've got so many really quirky little ideas at the moment. Just these really random things that are sticking in my head. Somebody did a tweet the other day about the Salisbury Cathedral dipstick, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness me, that's a video and a half, isn't it? What else? Hadrian's
That's
Wall.
almost as bad as WC21's Roman phallus thing.
Wow, yeah. I mean, there's not a lot phallus about it. Almost the opposite, actually. Yeah.
Is that one of the ones that has water underneath it?
Well, yeah. I mean,
or...
yeah. The basic principle is it's not quite like Winchester. But the basic principle is it needs the water. So if the water gets too low, they've got a problem. So they have to top it up using a system of sluices from one of the many rivers that come into Salisbury. And so yeah, literally daily or once every couple of days, they have to lift the dipstick, check where the water is, either let a bit of water out or let the water in, because it's sort of a gravel, marshy, I don't know what the right phrase is, but sort of a consistency of water and gravel, and it has to be at the right consistency for it to stay as it is. Because I think the cathedral in its own right was fine until they then put the spire on, which weighed something like, I don't know, 30,000 tons or something stupid, and that caused problems. Straight away it started to lean, and they realised that it only has a problem when the water level is low, so they have to maintain the water level to keep it exactly as is, and they do that via a dipstick. And I thought that's a great title. And then somebody else mentioned on Twitter something about Hadrian's Wall was named incorrectly for 1,000 years. I think, oh my goodness me, so I did a whole bunch of research on that story. It was only 1840, a man called John Hodgson who discovered it was actually Hadrian, not Severus, that built the wall. And even the Romans at the end of their tenure tenure's probably the wrong word, but the Romans didn't know who built the wall. It's sort of 350 AD, all the writing said it was Severus that built the wall. So that I've been filming that as well. And to top it all off, I've done another top 5 Roman road myths, but I'll come to that shortly. Because that video went quite well, and there was I don't know, like 2,000 comments of people telling me I'm an idiot and I've got it wrong. So I thought, right, I need to redo this. So I've had a bunch of days. The weather's been great. The weather's been really good, apart from the last couple of days with the storm. The weekend, I thought it was a really good opportunity to get out and do some blue sky filming. Yeah.
I want to just mention something to John before we go to what he's done the last 2 weeks. I've been playing a game in the last few videos he's done called Tweedy Bingo. It's just basically phrases that I'm, sort of ticking off to try and get bingo. So I'll just take the ones from the last video. Terrible camera work. You always say you have such a low opinion of yourself when it comes to that. But
I think it's warranted.
The thing is, I'll pause there, Hedley, because what is terrible camera work? What is it? Because you're doing a vlog, so
partly this comes from I did a short. No one really likes these, but when I got to 1,000 subscribers, I did a short video sort of saying, the usual kind of thanks to all you for subscribing. And I am genuinely very, very grateful for my the people who sit through all that nonsense. But then normally you would also thank people in real life, like I'd like to thank my wife for supporting me and my friends and family. And almost nobody I know in real life actually likes my videos. That's sort of universally. One of my very close friends can't watch it because he's got, slight balance issues. And he finds the combination of the fact that I'm not very good at getting horizon straight. I'm just a bit of a slapdash photographer, and cameraman, if that's the right word. And the horizon's not straight, and then sometimes my attention is suddenly drawn by, I'm pointing the camera there, and then suddenly, oh, look over there, and there's a lot of sort of very jerky kind of spinning it around, and
I think that works for
I
everyone.
like
talking.
Yeah.
I'm sort of pointing the camera and I'm talking, and I think, oh, I might turn the camera around to myself. My wife was watching that once and said, why do you have to point the camera at your face?
I like it. I think it's great.
Doing yourself any favors. You married that face.
I like it because it makes us feel like we're there. Basically, if you're
that's
walking and talking with someone,
principle. Totally, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I like it. That's why I like it. So the next one is one that I've adopted myself inadvertently, and that's when you see a field of sheep or cows, you shout, "Hello, ladies."
Do I hadn't noticed. Yeah, I mean, who's it? Is it I've forgotten his name now. Hayes Outdoors, another outdoorsy sort of YouTuber. He'd always say, "Hello, guys." I don't know if he was meaning that in a kind of non-gender sort of say, guys. I always think, guys meaning men. And I always wanted to comment on his videos. Probably most of those sheep he's referring to. Yes, I don't know. It just seems sort of natural because they respond. Livestock. I think in that video on the South Downs, you could say I was walking along, and I think perhaps the act of me talking sort of startled them a bit, and they ran off. And I feel bad about that. I feel quite guilty. I think you're having a nice serene time, and then this idiot in a tweed suit. I'm wearing kind of one of their relatives' fleece as well, probably. So I feel bad about that kind of, they're having a completely undisturbed time, thinking it's great there aren't any humans here, and then this idiot fumbles along and ruins it.
We have a few more. So apologizing for the noise of the traffic when it's not actually your fault. I think that's one fantastic. And obviously one that a lot of YouTubers use, in fact most of the ones I follow, hashtag leave no trace. Very important, I think, at times when right to roam and wild camping is under such scrutiny. I think that hashtag leave no trace is a very powerful kind of way of saying to landowners, look, there's no difference for me being here or not.
I hate seeing, I'm sure everyone here is the same. I hate seeing litter in the countryside. Just why does that ever happen? I just can't understand the mindset of somebody who would be in that kind of, have gone to the effort of going out into that kind of beautiful location on top of the South Downs or something, and you're, I don't know, eating a packet crisp or whatever, and just I can't, you're there to enjoy it, and how can you not see that sort of ruining it?
Up Lowbury Hill today, absolute middle of nowhere, beautiful views. I picked up about 3 different Coke cans, and you think, well, if I threw a Coke can over my shoulder up there, that's going to be on my mind, and I'm going to be like, I need to plan to go up there tomorrow, and who does it? Same with the dog poo bags.
I saw that in one of your recent videos. It's bizarre. Four
of them along the Ridgeway.
I've seen a sign on some paths actually saying, just don't bag it. If you're gonna
just let it by as you go.
Like this is the lesser of two evils. If your dog craps on the side of the path, just leave it. Right. If you're not going to pick it up, if you're not going to take the bag home, don't bag it.
My favourite Tweedy catchphrase of all is when you're in a beautiful place doing something that most people would perceive as mundane. So you're chopping vegetables in the middle of a stone circle, and you just look at the camera and go, terrible entertainment. I mean, that's fantastic.
I guess it's just what comes naturally, but it is surreal sometimes.
It's brilliant.
I guess when you're making videos, you're sort of you've got more of a sort of story to tell, and you're not there sort of chopping onions. But I get these surreal moments. You have an idea in your head of, this is the story I'm trying to tell in the video. This is the sort of narrative arc of the story. But I guess the outdoors videos, at least, they're sort of just a record of an experience.
Which is what makes it enjoyable, isn't it? Because it's
exactly.
You're literally doing what you said on the tin, which is, I would be doing this anyway. So it's 100%. You're doing a vlog. And that's exactly what it's all about. You're just being you, which is great. Which is why people invest in it.
And what I love about it is when you're in the middle of nowhere, on the South Downs, on the Ridgeway, whatever. For 99.9% of people, the very last thing they're going to be able to enjoy is a French onion soup that's just been cooked. That's what I love about it. It's like it's kind of the most improbable kind of thing to eat in the wilderness, and yet you're cooking it so well, and
that was
that's
great.
what I love.
It's a very, very simple recipe. I not actually something I make very often at home, but it just works so well. And partly because it was cold and it was windy, and I really needed some hot food. But the most recent video I did in the South Downs, absolute failure. The cooking there, it completely didn't work. But that's like
part of the experience.
Keith Floyd reference, isn't it? Half the time when Keith Floyd cooks something,
you have got a touch of the Floyd about you when you're cooking. I think that's fantastic.
I mean, I loved his shows when I was when I was a kid. I mean, I don't think they were made for kids, but I watched it as a kid, and I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've really enjoyed any other cooking programs since. And I love food and I love cooking, but most other cooking shows on TV, by comparison, they're so bland. And whereas he had so much, character and personality, and he showed the mistakes, and so I guess it's a bit of a tip of the hat to Floyd.
So to our listeners, if you really want to appreciate what we're talking about here, and I heartily recommend afterwards, go onto YouTube, look for any channel that's prefixed with the word Tweedy, particularly Tweedy Outdoors, and just subscribe to it. You will personally thank me for it, because when you're sitting in a dull control room or office or wherever it is, and you want a little bit of the outdoors, planes crashing overhead while you're meant to be working. Looking at your cooking, I think you're probably responsible for me putting on about 4 stone, but that's fine. I think that's
I get a lot of people in the comments say that their alcohol intake has increased dramatically after watching my videos.
It's funny you should say that. I usually only drink alcohol when I'm doing this podcast, and it's usually a beer, but I was at an RAF ATC dinner the other day, because I'm the chairman of the local ATC, and I got awarded a bottle of red. So I thought, do you know what? That's good timing. Tweedy's going to be on the podcast, so I'm doing that. I mean, it's probably not quite your thing, but but it's red wine, and it's, for me, it's the blood of Christ. It'll do. So John, what have you been up to these last 2 or 3 weeks then?
I mean, probably the one that would be most interesting to the podcast is I walked along the Ox Droves. I don't know if I'm allowed to plug a book in this. The authors are dead, so I have no. So
I love that.
Have
book.
you read this?
Yeah, I've got a copy.
Yes.
I love that book.
Yeah,
great. I mean, I slightly wish they went into a bit more of the actual history of the tracks, because it's the most of the bulk of it is a sort of turn by turn directions along the tracks. And the maps are really good, I thought, as well. And there aren't a lot of other more. I couldn't find more modern books that actually covered this sort of that kind of breadth of ancient tracks. So I've been kind of going through these sort of one by one, and there's a relatively short one that goes across Cranbourne Chase. So it starts more or less at Salisbury and it goes to Shaftesbury. And I don't think anyone knows particularly how old this is. And it may not be, it probably isn't as ancient as the Ridgeway or the Great Ridgeway as they call it in here, to distinguish it from all the other ridgeways. But it was kind of fascinating, because there's this sort of long-running idea that in the winter these hilltop tracks are the one way that allow you to traverse large parts of the land and not be sort of wading through mud and not have giant. And my experience was very different. This was an incredibly muddy track, pretty much from start to finish. And there were times when I had to leave the track. It wasn't just my boots are getting a bit muddy. It was sort of I would be knee deep in I think puddle would be an understatement. It was a sort of small lake forming right across the track in places. So it was fascinating. I mean, it's a little bit like what I was saying before about the part of the magic of Avebury is that you're not there on a kind of timed. You're not sort of given half an hour to experience Avebury, and then you've got to shuffle along and get back on the bus, as it is at Stonehenge. And I think these sort of ancient tracks, I feel like they give me this ability to experience something hopefully ancient, but over a really prolonged period. I was walking it didn't need to be a 2-day walk. I could probably have just about done it if I'd started early enough, all in one day. But that sort of sense of escaping the modern world, it wasn't just a kind of 20-minute sort of, chunk of that. It was a prolonged experience over a whole, as I did it, day and a half, with a camp in the middle. But yeah, I find that sort of really magical. I don't quite know how how genuinely old it is, but that sort of being able to recreate that experience that is very possibly 2,000, 3,000 years old, I would imagine. Driving track could be older than that.
Yeah, I mean the Ox Drove is beautiful. It's not managed like the Ridgeway is, but it's in fact I got given by Anna Dillon an original artwork she did called the Ox Drove, and it's the bit you walked as it goes around a sort of 90-degree corner and climbs up to Wyn Green, and we were up there on a summer's evening, and I launched the drone up and did some aerial photography, and she painted it, and it's the one at the exhibition that I really liked. And what I didn't know is she kept it aside for me, so it's now just been screwed up on my lounge wall, and so I've got the Ox Drove on my wall, and it's a wonderful place. The thing you were talking about actually about appreciating a place when it's tranquil and staying there, I used to get the very feeling when I lived and worked on Lundy Island in the summer. You go over on a boat of 300 people, and they'd be there for a few hours, see the pub, see the lighthouse, and then they would all disappear back to the boat, and the whole island would just go quiet, and you've then got this rock in the Atlantic Ocean / Bristol Channel to yourself, and it just goes quiet. You've got no mobile signal, you've got no TV, you've got no phone. God help you if you fall down a cliff. But it's wonderful, and you then have all the time in the world. All you've got to focus on is this lovely bit of land in front of you. Nothing else matters. It's amazing. And people that are there on sort of time pressure to visit it, they say, right, they're busy on the boat working out, what are we going to see, how are we going to get to these places, and then they go. And it just, it becomes a chore, a chore in a nice location, but a chore nonetheless. But if you just walk and spend time in these places and just appreciate what's around you, you get a very different experience, and they're the ones that you're gonna, remember. So,
I wonder, Paul. I mean, you feature some spectacular locations in your video, but I mean, are you sort of on quite a tight schedule, and do you actually get a chance to sort of hang around and enjoy these places, or is it sort of you watching your clock and thinking, you've got to shuffle on and get to the next? The Ridgeway video that you made recently, for example, fantastic locations. I mean, some of my absolute favourite places that you pass through there. But do you actually get time to sit and enjoy them, or are you
not really? No, this is my one frustration. I don't, because I've tried to slow down a lot in terms of what we used to do. We used to do old railways or old canals and try and cover it in a day. And as you say, you just pick out what you think are the best bits. And I guess the Ridgeway one reminded me of that a bit, because I just tried to go and see the big locations, and even walking from Uffington to Wayland. I mean, it's only 1.5 miles or whatever, but it's still, 2-3 hours. And when you're filming, I'm putting the camera down, trying to film interesting things, trying to say a bit of a script that I've learned, and all of a sudden that's half a day just doing Uffington and Wayland. And I that's one of my regrets at the moment. I'm trying to work out how I can change that, is try and learn how I can sort of savor these places a bit more, because you're right, the Ridgeway video was a great example how of just picking sort of 8 spots maybe, and 2 or 3 days, okay. It's always a schedule. So I've tried to do things differently of late. I've tried to do videos which aren't necessarily on site, but they've just got a nice backdrop, or just somewhere I can go and enjoy a bit. I did that Vinland map one maybe 2 months ago, and I just went to a hill fort. Nothing to do whatsoever with the video, but I just thought, I'm going to go spend half a day at a hill fort, one hill fort, and I did a lap of it, and I thought that's kind of what I want, a bit more of that, where there's not necessarily an exact tie-in, but I can still tell a story. I'm still outside doing what I want to do. I need to learn how to do that a bit more. That's my one sort of resolution.
Do you think you'd ever go back to a more sort of vlogging type format, or has that ship sailed now on the main channel?
I don't know really. I did enjoy the vlog. The vlogs are a lot easier to edit because they can be
linear.
It's linear. It absolutely is linear for a start. and it's
Your
just
timeline in whatever editor you're using is very flat.
yeah, your timeline's
Like
flat.
the
Exactly.
more layers I've
Yeah.
got in the timeline, the
But-
more headache it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Paul, you could do them as part of Wessex Ways. You could do, without interrupting your main channel, you could do
Yes.
a vlog and put it as not necessarily an episode of the podcast, but use the Wessex Ways channel. You know,
Yeah,
just thinking out
absolutely,
loud.
yeah. I think to answer the question properly, I think when we did vlogs, we would get a core audience plus another 25%. So we might get 30, 40,000 views, which is great and no complaints. Then when we did the odd one or two where we tried to sort of produce a better quality, if that makes sense. I don't want to sound pretentious at any point.
Oh, but it is more documentary style.
Yeah,
now,
documentary style, yeah. I got so much more of a buzz out of doing that. And then all of a sudden the views piled in with it as well. And I thought, it's a whole all-round enjoyable experience. And we did chuck a couple of vlogs back in between here and there. And they do fill a gap. But yeah, I don't enjoy them as much, I guess, because I enjoy the end result more of a well-worked documentary, if that makes sense. Because I feel like a big sense of achievement almost to a degree, where I'm thinking, hey, I really enjoyed that. You know, I've done one today, and it took me probably 2 working days to edit. And as you said, there's layers and layers and layers because I've got, you know, sound effects when something moves. I've got something moving in. I've got a filter on top of it. I've got a layer underneath it, and I've got me speaking, and I've got some music. So all of a sudden, I've got like 8 different things going on one clip. But I kind of get that buzz out of that. But yeah, just learning how to appreciate a location more, running from one to the next, is definitely a thing that I'm not very good at.
So
Yeah.
talking of locations, then, just going back to John, where you got your train ticket and you know, etc. How do you pick a site for actual wild camping? Is there something you're looking for? I mean, obviously, you know, location is a lot. So it's obviously like you camped on, for example, that clump of trees on Milk Hill. I think you camped on your way. I can't remember where you were going to, but that was a great video because you'd walked around, you know, my favourite area, and you know you've camped on the ridgeway at the top of the Hare Path, I think, in Avebury. So how do you pick a site to camp? I mean, Paul and I are talking about wild camping, and we need to learn from the best, really.
I don't know about the best. Well, so I mean, you know, the wild camping for me started as a means to an end. It wasn't. I mean, I had done some as a teenager. So my dad is a great lover of the outdoors, and you know, we'd done some sort of longer walks when I was a teenager, and we did a bit of wild camping then. But you know, to begin with, before I started making the videos, I was doing a lot of these long distance trails. I walked the South Way, I walked the Ridgeway, walked the Wessex Ridgeway, and I think I caught the tail end. I just started making the channel when I got towards the end of the Wessex Ridgeway, and the wild camping was really just about being able to do longer walks. I could do a 2-day walk, and I didn't have to find you know, a village with a pub with rooms in the middle, or you know, B&B or whatever. It meant that I could do, you know, and I always like to start at a station and end at a station, or maybe a bus stop at least, but some sort of public transport. Because you know, I do have a car. Well, my wife has a car, but I would rather not drive given a choice. And you know, of course, if you've got a car, you've got to get back to where the car is. So I like to try and use public transport. And the wild camping was really just a sort of means to let me do a 2-day walk. If particularly on the Wessex Ridgeway towards the end, I remember the gaps between the stations as you got further into Dorset. I did it starting at Avebury and ending at Lyme Regis. And as I got closer to Lyme Regis, more into Dorset, the stations were getting further and further apart, and I just couldn't structure it anymore so that I could start and end the day at stations, or even bus stops sometimes. You know, perhaps a better planner would be able to figure out a way to do that. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the time the choice of the wild camping spot is just the middle. It's just, you know, I here's a station, here's another station, here's a route that I want to take. And the wild camping spot is often just somewhere roughly in the middle. No, I usually look for open access land, and you know, there's a big rumbling debate about, you know, sort of the we probably don't want to get into the sort of legalities of it, but you know, there are sort of you know, technically, of course, it's not really very officially allowed, and not explicitly allowed anywhere. But you know, I sort of see open access land as a bit of a grey area, as long as you're leaving no trace and doing all the other good stuff. So yeah, I mean, open access land, you know, as far away from habitation as possible. You know, so you're not disturbing anyone. Generally try to stay away from livestock again, so I'm not disturbing the livestock and they're not disturbing me. Sometimes aim for more wooded areas if I think it's going to be difficult to find a spot, you know, on a hilltop that would be sufficiently sort of discreet. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, you know, the broader location, it is often really is just the middle of a 2-day walk.
Yeah, and a great example of that is also well, I don't know if it's recent because I haven't watched your videos in order, but you did one. We've done quite a few actually on Dartmoor, and so your journeys across Dartmoor are brilliant because it has really opened my eyes to the place. I mean, I've only seen little bits of it here and there, but you know, you did quite a big walk that ended up on down sort of the eastern side of it. And it's an area I'm not familiar with. It is wonderful, and you know you found a couple of stone circles and everything, and that was amazing. That was.
Yeah, I mean, Dartmoor is the one place where there is. I mean, you know, this has also been controversial because, you know, and you've probably heard it's been in the courts a little bit with one landowner trying to remove that long running explicit right to wild camp on Dartmoor. I mean, for the time being, it's still allowed. So that, I mean, that felt like a wonderful sense of freedom for me. You know, normally I'm having to be a little bit sort of, I suppose, stealthy about it in other locations, whereas on Dartmoor, as long as you again follow the rules very carefully.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a map of specific areas where you can camp. But I think, you know, one of the things about Dartmoor is that short walks take a very long time. Short walks in distance terms take a very long time. So I think at least one of those Dartmoor videos, I did a 2-day walk. I possibly only walked sort of 12 or 13 miles, but I think it was winter time as well, and the daylight hours weren't very long. And I would have struggled to have done that all in one day because the terrain's so sort of rough, and it's very easy to get lost. I did a couple of times, and so, you know, it's really useful having that freedom to just sort of pitch where, you know, you get to a certain point. So I didn't necessarily plan that, you know, I would definitely camp here in advance. I was hoping I would get to that point, but I was aware of the fact that the terrain's a bit difficult. I might not make it to that point, but you have that freedom there to just sort of pitch within the map. You can pitch just about wherever you want.
Yeah, and an example of what you're saying about the lack of progress is where when I think it was steep tour, you could see it ahead of you, and it's like it's just over there. It's not far away as the crow flies. You know, it could launch a drone. Well, not in Dartmoor, but you could launch a drone and it would get there quickly. But then, of course, you suddenly go down into this dip and there's a raging torrent of water and there's a hill to climb. And that little thing that's just over there suddenly becomes 40 minutes away. And I've, you know, from what I've seen of Dartmoor, it's difficult to negotiate. You don't have these easy footpaths everywhere, you know, like you do elsewhere in the south of England. And
it's stunning country. I mean, it's always. I've always actually found it slightly scary. I'm quite happy to say, you know, that's part of the appeal of it. It is sort of, it has this kind of, you know, you can see why Conan Doyle set Hand of the Baskervilles there. It's always had this kind of brooding, slightly sort of foreboding sense to it, and that's part of the appeal. It's sort of, it feels slightly dangerous. It probably is slightly dangerous. I mean, you know, the terrain's so rough, it's so boggy and inaccessible in places, and it's one of the most remote parts of well, it is the most remote part of southern England, and yet, of course, being England, you're never more than, I don't know, 10 miles at absolute most away from a house. But it does feel slightly sort of menacing at times. And
it does. I mean, I climbed with my son up. We went from Tavistock up the other side of Dartmoor. I can't remember the name of the tours. There's so many of them. But we and very quickly, within an hour, you're in the middle of nowhere, and there is no one else. I mean, you can see for miles in every direction, and there's no one at all. Yeah. And as you're right, there's boggy bits, and
the weather can change very suddenly. There, you know, it can be, you know, brilliant sunshine 1 minute, and an hour later it's thick mist, or, you know, driving rain, or so yeah, I think that is part of the appeal. The fact that there's something slightly edgy about it. You know, it's
Mm.
it's a challenge. You know, and I like that is. You know, I'm you know, despite my slightly sort of slapdash on-screen persona, I do have a very strong sense of self-preservation. I'm not sort of ever deliberately trying to,
No,
you know,
no.
get myself killed on one of these trips. You know, I'm always very careful and have sort of backup devices and, you know, backup
Yeah.
of various forms. I'm never really that far from civilization, but I think, yeah, that adds an edge to it, that it is actually slightly something slightly menacing about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to be very quick with what I've been up to this week. I went. We tried to find the site of the Battle of Ashdown, 871. So went up with the Ridgeway trail officer, the representative from Friends of the Ridgeway. We were meant to have Historic England with us, but Dan Bashford couldn't make it, unfortunately. Had the official Ridgeway photographer with us, Matt Riddle, and Anna Dillon, the artist, and we you know, we're not going to write history, but, you know, the Battle of Ashdown is not very well documented. There was a priest in it who scribed it from the West Saxon point of view, but, you know, we don't know much. But we think we know the most likely place it happened up, you know, near Lowbury Hill. Today I've been up Lowbury Hill again with a few people, Reading University, and we've been doing some geophys because I sent the drone up in July 2022, when it was really dry, and I picked out a couple of new earthworks up there that hadn't been noted. Looks like they're ring ditches, so we've been up there doing geophys today in the most hideous conditions you can imagine. I had to carry a 35 kilogram coffin sized case up there as well, and we're doing it again the next 2, maybe 3 days as well. So but the weather's not going to be quite as bad. I think that's about it. I did the White Horse Hill. I did a walk, White Horse Hill, Rams Hill. Made a little YouTube video about it. Plug my own channel, my own little failing channel. And
I think it's beautiful. I've been really enjoying your videos.
Oh,
They're
thank you.
stunning. Yeah, really nice.
Apart from, as many people have pointed out, my failure to clear out my nose that day.
Well, my daughter tells me that all the time. I think she's a bit shorter than me, you know. So when she sort of,
Yes.
you know, her head
Yeah.
like comes up here and she looks up at, oh, yeah.
But I will say, sunrise over Uffington Castle. It's
Yeah,
an experience I recommend. It really is an experience I recommend. But yeah, wind chill up there was not pretty nice. And the other thing is, I've been speaking to the BBC. This podcast has gone out on regional radio, so a snippet of our Silbury Hill has gone out. BBC Radio Wiltshire, BBC Radio Somerset, BBC Radio Gloucestershire, and BBC Radio Wiltshire. So it's had 2 airings out there. So if we have any new listeners, well, thank you very much for joining us, and that's about
Indeed.
it, really.
Was it called
That's all I've been up
BBC
to.
Upload or something? Is it BBC Upload or BBC Up?
BBC
or-
Upload. So I was
Upload.
approached by this gentleman on social media who listens to the podcast. Hello. I'm not going to mention him by name. GDPR and all that. And yeah, he asked me if I could provide a section of the podcast. So I did the Silbury Hill piece. And yeah, sure enough, went to the upload.
You obviously submitted Treasure Hunt, Hedley, right? Because obviously that's the most entertaining part of this podcast, clearly. or Hedley, or he asked for Treasure Hunt. He said specifically, "Can you please ensure there's a Treasure Hunt section that you upload?" I assume that's what you did, Hedley, right?
Working. No, I didn't. No. So, Paul, over to you. So, you were going to talk a bit about one of your videos before we play the the treasure hunt.
The greatest game on any podcast show is the word you're looking for. I was going to talk very briefly. I wonder if I should screen share. Do you know what? I'm not going to screen share on the basis that this is a podcast. So other than the fact there are people obviously watching on the YouTube channel, I want to share or talk about an image, which I'm going to bring up on my computer, which is an image of a Roman road being built. So I did a video probably 3 months ago now called "Everything You Know About Roman Roads Is Wrong," and it was a very clickbaity kind of title. And I must have got 2,500 comments of people shouting at me, telling me that everything I had done was wrong. But what I'd researched was a lot from the Roman Road Research Association. They've got a lot of archaeologists actively working on Roman roads, and I kind of did a video based on one of their lectures, and it just fascinated me that the amount of people that didn't fully understand what I was trying to say. Maybe I wasn't very clear, but the essence of a Roman road is so sort of simple in its construction, but there was a man named Nicholas Berger back in sort of the 1500s, I think, and he was a Frenchman, and he described how a Roman villa was built, and he described that you need foundations, and you need to dig these foundations between 3 and 6 foot deep, and you need to have this layer and this layer and this layer. And essentially what happened was it got translated into this is how you build a Roman road. And literally, even now, all over Wikipedia, in textbooks for actual road construction today, where it introduces the history of road building and the Romans, it's wrong. And it talks about 3 or 4 different layers over a 6 foot deep foundation under a Roman road. And if you type in Roman road construction on Google, it'll take you 2 seconds, you'll get 1,000 images of a 6 foot trench. So I kind of made a video half based on that and how it's wrong. And if you have a look at any archaeological dig outside of a city or outside of the Appian Way, you will find maybe a 6-inch trench, and it's not even a trench, it's where they've scraped away the vegetation and the topsoil. Then you find an agger which was built up of 3 or 4 different layers, purely based on the geology that was local to them, of maybe about 18 inches at the most. And that was it. That was kind of what I tried to explain, but people sort of, everybody outside of the UK didn't understand it, because all they'd seen is the very well paved streets of the Appian Way, and I was sent pictures, I was sent emails, I was even sent a picture of the Foss Way. And there's a very famous image of the Foss Way where they did an excavation in the early 1900s, and it is about 7 or 8 feet in its construction. And this is one of the things I've tackled in a new video, where I was sent this image saying, oh well, you're saying they're only about 2 foot high at the very most and there was no great trench, explain this. And they sent me this picture of the Foss Way, which is about 7 foot. And again, one of the main archaeologists at the Roman Road Research Association basically said, well, when they did do the dig, they realised it wasn't contemporary. Those layers weren't built all at once. And this is what I was talking about with the whole 400-year history. Those layers were just built, repaired 50 years later, repaired 100 years later, and all of a sudden you've got a 6 foot high, not deep, you've got a 6 foot high, and there's this wonderful picture which I will put up for our YouTube viewers of the Foss Way looking like it's 6 or 7 feet deep, but it's not deep, it's repair after repair after repair, almost rendering it not a via, because at the top it's so thin, as if to just have one sort of cart on it. But I'll share a few images for the YouTube viewers as we're talking about this, because it continually fascinates me that this still, a great example is it Black Edge? Oh, what's it called? Hold on. Up in Yorkshire, Blackstone Edge. There's a very famous picture of Blackstone Edge when you type in Roman road. It's got a drainage ditch down the middle. And even in 2012, an archaeologist said, no, it's definitely Roman, provided no proof, just said it's Roman because it goes along the Roman road. But again, the Roman Road Research Association have found that it was actually a turnpike road built in 1734-35, and it fell out of use after about 25 years. And the rumours thereafter said, oh, it's a Roman road, and the rumours continued. And nobody ever really questioned it until... But why would they have a fully fledged stone road? And again, the Roman Road Research Association have proved that it was actually just a turnpike road. It's not Roman at all. So yeah, it's fascinating. I've been sort of learning how to deal with a lot of hate compared to normal, because normal hate, you just get a few people telling you can't pronounce the word free properly, and things like that. But this was a whole new level of you're an idiot, you've not seen the Appian Way, or you're an idiot because you've not seen this picture of the Foss Way or whatever. But yeah, anyway.
You know I'm always going to be your bouncer on that. You know, someone gives you a hate comment, I'm first to pile in.
Well, yeah.
You know,
I mean, as we
I got
saw with the Vinland saga.
exactly. I got you know 3 followers, 2 of which are family members, and the other 2 tied to a post. So to be perfectly honest with you, I've got nothing to lose. So that's great. This podcast is actually going to go on quite long tonight because we've got a fascinating guest, and I've obviously got a subject that's going to take a little while as well. Talkative, so it's waffle. So yeah.
Sorry.
So for those that are still awake, no, just kidding. What I'd like to do is, before we play Paul's treasure hunt, is I just want to ask John a question about his thoughts on Wansdyke. So you've done videos on Wansdyke, so's WC21. We had Paul and I listened. We attended a wonderful talk by Dr. Alex Langlands, friend of the podcast, about Wansdyke, and there's going to be a report coming out very soon with optical luminescence dating of it, and therefore theories on why it was there. So Alex Langland's theory, I don't know if that was meant just for that audience. That's anything. Oh, you know what? I don't care.
I think we need to consider that the audience was a good 100 plus. So I think he wouldn't have said anything. He said he would be overly upset with us sharing.
No, okay, fair enough.
You know.
So the theory is, I mean, this will be confirmed or denied once the actual official date's out, but if the Wansdyke falls within the time period he thinks it probably is, which is around the 700s, then you're looking at an early Saxon trade boundary between Mercia and Wessex. Now, below, to the south of Wansdyke, you've got a lot of rivers that go down to the coast, like the Test, for example, and they were used to carry goods down to the coast and then trade with Francia, France. And Wessex wanted to protect those lines of trade from the dirty Mercians, and so Wansdyke, it would have been a kingdom-wide effort to build it. It's not, a few people with a few sticks. This is a massive, construction with little sort of areas where there would have been, guards, the cross dikes and everything. So that's kind of the leading sort of theory that he proposes, if the optical luminescence dating sort of puts it where he thinks it probably is. But John, you've done a few videos on this, and I think WC21 has sort of presented different options of what Wansdyke could be there. Do you have a gut feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I read Alan Sold. I wish I had this to hand, actually. It was part of my pile of books here. Alan Sold book. And I think WC21 UK Productions Limited also referred to that. I think I may have recommended the book to him originally, but I found that very convincing and compelling, and he has essentially 2 potential theories at the end, and one of them would tie in with what you were saying just now. It seems most plausible to me that it is roughly contemporary with Offa's Dyke, essentially, and built for possibly similar reasons that are slightly nebulous, we don't quite understand. But it's hard to maintain that it is purely defensive because of all the gaps. I think something like defining a kind of trade border or something like that. And Alan Solder also mentions that it may have just been a quite political exercise. Was it Steinwolf, the king at the time, who I may have got the name wrong there. I'd have to refer back to the book, but the particular king at the time was essentially trying to sort of curry favor with his courtiers by commissioning a big ambitious building project, a wall between him and his neighboring nation. I mean, I think as Darren said, it has sort of echoes of more recent history. It was a sort of somewhat politically motivated move, and in that sense may not have needed to be a sort of coherent military structure that was I don't know, have you ever watched Allotment Fox at all?
Yeah.
So I think
really good.
I don't know if he's someone you might actually consider to have as a guest as well. I think he's really fascinating guy. Makes beautiful videos. I think has a sort of quite an artistic background, but he's become very interested in. He tends to focus on that sort of early medieval period in a lot of his videos and the history that he covers. Although he says actually he's more interested in older history than that. But he has quite a lot of theories on Wansdyke and related earthworks around there that I think also seem very credible to me. He's just also a very persuasive speaker, I think.
So I mean, if he's listening, then that would be great. I mean, he did a fantastic video the other week on Segsbury Camp, and he just seems to have that kind of no nonsense insight. Not, he kind of puts. It's difficult to describe the way he presents his videos, but he does it in an extraordinarily relatable way, and probably simplifies it for people like myself. But he's very, very convincing, and he visits some fantastic locations. Because he did Wayland Smithy as well recently. That was amazing. So
I mean, I think he's convincing because he has conviction. I think he's thought very carefully about, and I think a lot of his source material is the Saxon Charters. So he's pretty much taught himself Old English so that he can read sort of archaic texts, often not fully translated yet, and then. I think one of the key bits of evidence that he relies on are place names. Quite often, place names sort of tell you about the history of the place, including one of my favourite ones. Actually, was an area I suggested you go to because I happened to pass through it on the Wessex Ridgeway. It's a little corner of Dorset. I forgot the name of the village now, but he essentially said, well, these are Welsh place names in Dorset, and this was an enclave of Brythonic that probably survived beyond. The sort of the Saxon kind of conquest of that area that mostly wiped out Brythonic, or he just calls it Welsh. I mean, rather than using the word Brythonic for a very considered reason as well, which I forget. It's not being lazy. He's very deliberately saying they spoke Welsh rather than they spoke Brythonic, but I can't remember his rationale for that. But he's really thought about it. Whatever it was.
And there's a video on that specific topic about the villages.
Oh, wow, these villages in Dorset, which are effectively sort of a Welsh enclave, and as far as I can tell, he's discovered that. I don't think there are any other I mean, perhaps other antiquarians have written about this, historians have written about this, and just it's not well known about. But it's I'm kicking myself now. I can't remember the name of the village because I walked through it. It's just off the Wessex Ridgeway. Shroton. It's a village that has two names. Either called Shroton or Ewan Courtney, and it's just off the. I simply recommend it to him because I thought it was bizarre that this village, the sign for the village says Ewan Courtney or Shroton. It has two names.
Okay. Wow!
So the whole idea of a village that has this identity crisis, and it turns out part of that identity crisis is because it's this sort of Saxon identity being imposed upon what was this sort of Welsh enclave, and for a long time the Welsh residents sort of held out against that and said, well, no, we're Welsh, even though we're in the middle of Dorset, long into a period where that no longer. So anyway, I'm babbling again. But
so
actually,
I
think he's, I would quite often bow to his opinion on these things. So if particularly for the Wansdyke, I think he spent a lot of time thinking very carefully about this and using slightly alternative sources of evidence to.
Well, this is very much how Alex Langlands presented that talk, Hedley. He did half the talk on the physics of it, the luminescence testing, and all the sort of the boundaries of it and the aspect of it, the landscape of it. Then the next half of it, which lost me on a lot of areas, was because he was going into the language and the charters and the Saxon charters and picking out names and then picking out the sort of the etymology of the names. Certainly on the eastern side, when you're the Newbury direction, let's call it, and that was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Similar sort of workings, because he could clearly read these Anglo-Saxon charters, which made me very jealous. And that's a future project.
Excellent. So I was going to actually. So let's go back. Allotment Fox. If you are on the off chance watching this, comment below. It'd be good to hear from you.
Yeah.
And also, I think if we're talking Shroton, we're probably talking Paul Timlet area.
Sure
so if he's got any,
Hedley, that's a different.
then I was talking about the Wiltshire one, but you're not. Okay, yeah.
I'm guessing. I'm
Okay.
guessing based on the
Yeah.
different names. I think.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? So is it just in Wiltshire? I thought it was Dorset. I mean, I'm confused
Well, no,
because I did it on
Shrewton
the
is a village in Wiltshire, but I think you
right.
must be talking about a different Shrewton. I
Yeah,
think.
it's either Wiltshire or Dorset because I mean I think part of the difficulty of doing these walks on foot. It's obviously it's a walk. These journeys on foot. Part of the challenge. I don't know what county I'm in sometimes. A lot of it because you don't sort of pass all the kind of so
Yeah, the road
the
signs.
boundary's often quite subtle. But yeah, it's just off the Wessex Ridgeway anyway.
Okay. So before we go to treasure hunt, I was going to do a section on Tweed, but I can see we're going to be running quite long on this. So I was going to ask John about gateway tweed so that I can get into it without my wife divorcing me, maybe something dark grey. I was going to ask him about the tweed he's wearing, and I was going to ask him about his favorite type of tweed, and let me just pick one of those. So no, let's scrap all of that. Why tweed? Let's just do a quick sentence. Why tweed?
I find it spellbinding. At the point at which my friends and I were getting to the point we could no longer be bothered with fancy dress parties. When we were in our 20s, we had a lot of birthday parties and stuff. We would say, let's all get dressed up and wear ridiculous outfits. I think we sort of turned sort of 30-ish and everyone just got bored of it. So a friend of mine called Leon, he said, let's just wear hats. For my birthday party, no one can be bothered to put on a sort of whole costume. So just come wearing a hat. And I realized I didn't own a hat. So I went to the hat shop in London. There's a shop called, there's a couple of famous ones. There's one called Bates, one called Lock, the two most famous hat shops. I went in there and I just sort of wandered around thinking, well, if I were to wear a hat, what would I? And they had this sort of big pile of tweed caps. And it was like this sort of just incredible epiphany of like, where has this stuff been? Or this, it just, the look of this fabric was so sort of beguiling, so that was the kind of gateway tweed.
Tweed
was that tweed cap, and then I just kept going from there. Jackets followed, and then whole suits, and
Well, I'm glad you went down that route because we probably wouldn't have discovered your wonderful videos and your tweedy pubs as well. And
I mean, again, this is my normal attire. Darren will vouch for
Darren's
me.
the same. Darren's the same.
I'm not. This isn't a sort of a uniform or a costume for the videos. This is my normal day-to-day life.
Yeah, and increasingly people I know are people that wear tweed, and then David Carson is he always wears tweed, come rain or shine, and it just seems to work, this natural material. So Paul.
Right, wow.
Let me share my screen.
Here we go. You better
I'm not doing the music. I'm not doing the music.
You're not doing the music.
I'm not doing the. I'm not doing the treasure hunt music. I did it last time, but it didn't work.
I have that problem with my pubs videos a lot. Quite often I'm filming. If I film inside the pub and there's background music in the pub, then a couple of times I end up with copyright issues for that.
Yeah, of course.
Right, so you should see, for those that are listening in on Spotify, Apple, whatever, and Google, whatever, I'm now showing a map of the centre of the United Kingdom, Didcot, obviously, on my screen. So, Paul, we're going to do warm or cold. So you've got a railway station, you've got old railways. Tell me, do you want to go north, south, east, or west?
Was that not flooded recently? I've got a funny feeling the subway was flooded, wasn't it, for your local station?
Yeah,
you
it's always
couldn't
flooded.
get to the Heritage Centre, which was a travesty in its own self.
No, I find that such a bind. Can't get. There were two places you couldn't get to, which was the railway centre and Lidl's. So the Didcot community groups were going crazy. So.
Okay, right. If I'm starting this, where am I thinking you're going? I think it would be a safe bet to head west.
No, you're kind of staying the same. So we'll go to Wantage then, but you're not warmer or colder.
Okay.
So let's go over to our guests have got a better a better track record than you have. So, John, would you like to go north, south, east, or west?
Well, I mean, I would like to go south. I'm not sure if that's
okay.
sort of,
you see,
I
now,
don't know
Paul,
if that's achieving the objective we're trying to.
I know
objective.
you are
looking at this map,
achieving
if I was thinking about
the
where I would
objective.
go for a walk, I would head
Okay.
south from Wantage.
Okay, so that's good. So I'm just going to stop about here, and I'm not stopping for any reason. I'm just stopping because the train in question has run out of steam. Paul, your turn. North, south, east, or west?
You've got a lovely Roman road there that heads from sort of Newbury direction
Of
up
course.
towards Swindon, and somewhere there in the middle, Hedley, is a bit where it joins north south to Lambourne, but nobody knows where it is. I think. Well, do you want to carry on heading south towards the delightful,
That's a good idea.
antique town that is Hungerford?
Okay, you want to go to Hungerford? Is that
Well, I mean,
really? I
Hungerford,
mean, you've really made a small jump.
I mean, it is a small jump, isn't it? Do you want to carry on to the famous Coombe Gibbet, which you're almost in right now?
There we go. Okay, so what I will say there is you are warmer, but not massively warmer.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna hand over to John from Coombe Gibbet, the start of the test.
Okay. Way. Yep. John, what's your thinking here?
Well, I mean, I would again naturally head west from here. So I did a wild camp at a point on this map, which I don't know if I should disclose the exact location, but yeah, really...
I think west. I'll be honest with you, you're probably starting to get a bit colder if you go west.
Okay.
So yeah.
Try south then.
Oh, this is so utterly pointless. Yep. South. How has my life got to this?
I feel like we need a big jump.
Okay.
Hedley.
Yeah. Oh, that's now okay. Thank you.
I can feel it. I can feel it in the Hedley. We're in the center of the universe.
Can we go past Andover? No one really wants to stop in Andover.
No one wants to stop at Andover.
I don't think I've ever been to Andover.
You're not missing out.
Glorious A303 starts, the most beautiful dual carriage, well, only partially a dual carriageway.
Yeah.
There was a whole documentary about it. Did you ever see it? It's called
Highway to the Sun.
Highway to the Sun.
Yeah.
Adam Hart Davies, maybe?
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a million stories along the 303. We could go into great detail, but I think we probably need, for the sake of Hedley's sanity, we probably need to head down the Spratt and Winkle line, Hedley, towards Southampton, I'm guessing.
Right. Oh, thank God you're getting
that. See?
Right. Okay. So you've just made a good decision there. So you're at Southampton. You're sunning yourself in front of various cruise ships, and you have at your disposal, thank God, motorways now. So are we looking east or west? Because you can't really go further south, can you?
Well, I mean, there were 3 attempts to tunnel under the Solent to the Isle of Wight, Hedley, but I'm guessing that's not where we're going.
No, we're not going to the Isle of Wight, actually. No, we'll stay this side of the water.
Okay. I mean, your motorway runs out pretty quickly if you head west into the New Forest.
Yeah.
So are you thinking...
You'd be getting colder, though.
Yeah, exactly. So you thinking you want to go east along the M27?
Ah, yes. Now we're talking. So we've gone east a little bit, and we now have an intriguing kind of sprawl here. So anywhere here, so you're coming down the motorway and you're here, and you've got a bit of a junction here.
So you're Portsmouth.
Right. No. Okay. Portsmouth. We're getting warmer. So we are in Portsmouth.
You're in Portsmouth. I mean, other than like the Merry Rose and things like that.
Stop.
Whoa.
Right. Okay. How do I stop sharing? I do this for a living. Here we go. Right. Okay. So you've arrived at Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, which I am utterly relieved to say is the subject of my ramble today. And it's not just the historic dockyard. I'm going to do the 3 main ships and finish with the Battle of Trafalgar, because I think that a lot of the battles we've talked about have been a lot further back in history than this, and I think that it's about time we did a naval one. So Portsmouth Historic. Now the dockyard is situated on the west side of Portsmouth. So Paul, you can bring up on the screen whatever you want now. You can get up pictures of Mary Rose, Victory, Warrior. Am I really drinking this much wine? And this is not going to win.
I remember watching
pictures of the Battle of Trafalgar were good. So the dockyard is situated on the west side of Portsmouth, just to the south of the main naval port, and it gets between 400 and 800,000 visitors a year, and houses 3 main historic ships, those being HMS Warrior, Mary Rose, and HMS Victory. It also has other modern warships to look at, including those from World War One. And you can often see modern Navy destroyers moored up nearby, which is, quite impressive and imposing, to be honest with you. I've been there many times through my life and enjoy like the cafes and the museum areas. And there's a little boating lake there, which you can go on, or in the winter control model boats on. And the cafes are kind of decorated with books of, with loads of Navy regalia books, and themselves. The cafes themselves are good to look around. So starting with the Warrior, HMS Warrior. So the Wikipedia headline has HMS Warrior 1860. It's a 40 main gun steam powered armoured frigate. And it was built for the Royal Navy 1859 through to 1860. So adjusted for inflation, I've worked out she cost just under 40 million quid to build in today's money, and was the result of somewhat of an arms race between Britain and France. So the French had launched their battleship Napoleon previously, which was a large 90-gun steamship. In fact, I think it was probably the first steamship, and so it is a considerable threat to old Blighty here. So from here, France developed more steamships. Including the first, the first ironclad Goliath ship, which was called the Gloire, or the Gloire rather, which gave the Ottoman Empire a bit of a hard time, to be honest with you. So I suppose history repeats itself nowadays somewhat with French long-range missiles, but we won't go there. And Britain had to respond by building ships that could actually defend against these metallic seafaring French giants. And boy, did the Royal Navy respond. So the Warrior class warships, so that's HMS Warrior and her sister HMS Black Prince, were far bigger, far taller, far longer and heavier than any in the French fleet, and slightly faster too. So switching over to my own experiences of the Warrior, so the dimensions really strike me every time I visit. The masts are incredibly high, and it looks like such a long ship when you're on it. By far, obviously, the largest at the dockyard, of course, and one of the 3 historic ships there anyway. So the decking is really sort of thick, heavy wood, and you get the feeling of solidity through the whole ship, including its wrought armor belt, and especially actually as you go down into its interior. So they're inside like this solid wood and metallic ceilings, all the way through, and the captain and navigation areas are incredibly spacious, plush, well fitted, and you really get the sense that solidity was kind of the key here, and weight wasn't really any kind of objective at all. So it's like a smart, big, strong, suave, solid. It's kind of like a nightclub bouncer, this ship. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a dinner jacket. It's like Stormy Norman Schwarzkopf when he dressed for a parade. This ship, it's really quite intimidating. So you've got the 40-pounder guns, which are huge, and there are also 110 other guns, and the steering is kind of performed by these 4 conjoined steering wheels on the gun deck, and actually they're linked to 4 more down below for when the weather or the battle doesn't permit the use of the ones outside. So the overall restoration of the ship itself was obviously very intricate. The steam engine that you can see is clean, and you have to forgive me, I've got a cat going past. Hello, Ebony, this is a bad time. I'm going to try and ignore the fact that I have, that's my wine, that's not, bear with me. Okay, so that's professional. Terrible entertainment. So the ship's crew comprised of 50 officers and 656 sailors, of which 122 were Royal Marines. And she didn't actually see in the end an awful lot of battle action. And the rapid evolution of warship design for which Warrior was partly responsible, meant that she started to become obsolete only 10 years later after she was launched. And she was then used in sort of secondary roles as like minesweeper and a storage hulk. And after everything was removed, she was renamed Vernon 3, and she was used in the Royal Navy's torpedo school. She was then sold for scrap iron, but no one could be bothered to do anything with her, and so for 50 years she just lay offshore from an oil depot at the Lannion Cove, unloved, degraded, until everyone eventually forgot about her, other than a few barnacles and whelks, to be honest with you. So moving on to the Mary Rose. I'm not going to go into too many details about the Mary Rose. It's got a very long and colourful history, but I wanted to sort of share my own experiences. So the Mary Rose is the oldest ship at the dockyard, and it's a Tudor ship of Henry VIII's reign. Obviously wooden and far smaller than Warrior. There's only half of the hull of the original ship which remains, which was actually preserved as it was resting in the mud of the seabed after it sank in battle in 1545. Nowadays it's kept in this kind of climate controlled visitors centre building, and I just love visiting the Mary Rose. You go through like this modern visitors centre, and it shows you all about her, and then you actually go into the main hall itself to see her, and you walk. There's a walkway alongside her, and you can see the gun emplacements all the way along the lower decks, and you can kind of appreciate the high castle style design aft and fore with a low middle section. And she survived she served and survived in multiple battles against France, Scotland, and Brittany, and then eventually sank in the Solent. Now I'm old enough to remember seeing her being raised from the seabed. And it says October 1982, so it was live on TV, and we had a black and white TV in the kitchen and a colour one in the lounge because we were posh. And I distinctly remember the kind of the yellow Babcock cradle slowly lifting the Mary Rose millimetre by millimetre out of the water on a large crane, and there was kind of an eerie kind of sort of creaking noise at one point, which a few minutes later led to this kind of heart-stopping moment where a pin sheared in one of the support columns and the frame gave way, and the whole corner of the cradle, or the delicate ship inside, just crashed down into the water, with the top of the frame then falling back onto the ship. Luckily the cradle itself was strong enough that it didn't actually deform. It didn't deform and cause enough damage to the ship, and in the end she came up just fine. But for many years I believe she was being sprayed with saline water to protect the beams.
I remember that when I went to see it.
But now she's dry. She's there dry, and definitely worth a visit, and the information available in the visitor centre will keep you busy for some time. So on to HMS Victory. So
a thing I found fascinating is, wasn't it already 40 years? I don't want to steal your right.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Already 40 years old at the Battle of Trafalgar. I was covering this weirdly in a pub video the other day because it was a pub called the Victory, so I thought I would look up some of the history of HMS Victory.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah.
So, but to be the flagship, and it's a 40-year-old boat, a 40-year-old wooden boat. I mean, I don't know what the normal lifespan of that kind of ship of that era was.
It's not long. But I mean, some of the material that I'm going to use in the bit about the Victory now is from a YouTube channel called Roster Cuban. And so I'm also going to apologise, especially because of the wine, for my French and Spanish pronunciation, and to be frank, some of my English too. So I've been saving my favourite, and let's face it, probably the nation's favourite until last. HMS Victory, it falls between the Mary Rose and the Warrior in both age and size. It's a large ship for its time, 3 gun decks and 3 masts, and it's now painted in its original kind of black and orange stripes like a big bumblebee. I've been going to see Victory since I was small, and in recent years it's been undergoing this extensive renovation. So the masts have been removed for refurbishment, and more recently one entire half of the ship is now underneath like this temporary scaffolding construction, and because the ship bulges out towards the bottom, and the weight of the ship in the dry dock has been squashing and this bulging lower half. So I think that we won't see the ship back in one piece for a very long time, probably over a decade. But this really shouldn't put people off, because you can walk around the ship, underneath the hull. You can go around every deck. So HMS Victory, it still to this day serves as the flagship of the First Sea Lord. And in her time, she was a first-rate ship of the line for the Royal Navy. So most famously leading the British fleet in 1805 at the Battle of Trafalgar. So we'll go into that in a minute. So well, actually, so for this battle, we don't. So this battle, basically, for those that don't know, was probably the most famous sea-based military encounter in history, and it's the reason why Horatio Lord Nelson faces towards Victory and his column in London. The French Empire at this time would have been kind of the dominant military land power in Europe, but at sea the British Navy vessels had a much higher fire and reload rate than that of the foreign ships, which kind of led to this kind of battle advantage. So on the 21st of October 1805, Nelson led the British fleet of 27 ships aboard Victory down the Bay of Biscay towards Cape Trafalgar. And at 11:03, encounters the 33 Franco-Spanish Allied warships under Admiral Villeneuve's command, sailing back to Cadiz. And it's kind of they're going at 90 degrees towards this, and so foreign scoundrels that they are. At 11:45, Lord Nelson sends a historic message to his men. England expects that every man will do his duty. At midday, the Allied fleet of Spanish and French ships opened fire on the two approaching lines of the British Royal Navy ships. So they're firing towards the bow. So they haven't got actually a lot of impact zone to hit. At 12:35, Admiral Collingwood's column breaks the Allied rear line as Nelson looks on from the Victory. Large guns are being fired broadside into the ships, and the conditions for the men are basically hell-like. So you've got large cannonballs smashing around the interiors of the ships like a pinball machine, and so there's blood, bones, and splintered wood basically flying everywhere. At 12:45, Lord Nelson's column breaks the Allied centre, spearheaded by Victory herself. Very quickly, the ship Redoutable engages Victory, and the two ships are now pressed against each other side by side as their cannons begin smashing each other to pieces at absolute point-blank range. Now, because these ships are pressed together, the crew of the Redoutable attempt to board Victory, and at 1:15, unfortunately, Lord Nelson is shot on the deck by a French Marine on the Redoutable. The situation degrades and gets more desperate as the two ships slowly destroy each other, and the remaining crews fight with everything they've got left. Victory's remaining guns are firing at full rate directly into the gun decks of the French ship as the crew numbers tumble. Coming to the rescue, however, was HMS Temeraire, and it quickly engages the Redoutable, ending the French crew's attempt on Victory. And you've now got the two Royal Navy ships, what's left of them, smashing the Redoutable to basically blooded matchsticks. The Spanish ship, and this is where I'm going to get all the pronunciations. The Spanish ship Santísima Trinidad is engaged by three British ships, and one by one the Allied ships are disabled by the Royal Navy ships. At 5:30, Nelson dies after hearing about the dominance his navy is having. So from 2:20 through to 5:30, 21 of the Allied ships surrendered or were destroyed. The French ship Fogu is taken by HMS Temeraire. It's doing a good job there, that's him. The French ship Algeciras surrenders to HMS Bellefonds. The Spanish ship San Juan Nepomuceno surrenders, and the Santa Ana is disabled, and the ship Achilles explodes. The biggest ship of the 18th century, the Santísima Trinidad, sinks, along with the San Ildefonso and the Príncipe de Asturias. Admiral Villeneuve then surrenders on the Bucentaure, with over 8,000 of his sailors killed or wounded. Victory was damaged very badly and was towed to Gibraltar with the body of Nelson preserved for the voyage in a barrel of brandy. 7,000 of the Allied sailors had been captured alive and would end their lives on the awful British prison ships. 2,000 British sailors were killed or wounded. The ships that faltered were left as no more than erratic rafts of blood-stained wood with bodies smashed by stormy waters, and the wounded basically clinging on mercifully for dear life as eventually their torn bodies froze. So I do urge people to visit the Victory. It's an amazing ship. It's got a very low ceiling, so it's not great for tall people. The small but elegant captain's quarters are wonderful, though obviously not as grand as those of the later Warrior. The gun decks are served by a small galley, and the men slept in hammocks by their cannons. Towards the bow of the ship is the place that the gunpowder and ammunition was kept, and the conditions were described as being dangerous. So it was cold and it was full of rats and explosives. And then you can also now go up onto the deck and see the spot where Nelson was shot. And to be honest with you, I can't help but think England would be a very different place had this ship and her sister ships not existed. So there we go. That's my piece today.
Interestingly, so I've been looking at an image on Google Maps, as you do. Lovely image. Next to that, and in between the Mary Rose exhibit, is a 40-foot statue of a Navy man personnel, clasping a female in a short dress by the waist and kissing her. She's leaning right back. Traditional sort of pose. He's leaning over her, kissing her. She's 40 foot high, right? In front of that is a couple replicating that image. It's just beautiful.
Oh, brilliant.
When you see the podcast on YouTube, you'll see exactly what I mean. There's a couple just in front of that replicating the whole stance, and they've got a kid, and the kid's grabbing the woman's foot, trying to put it in the right place. Brilliant. Beautiful. Hedley, brilliant. Do us a favour, screen share your map again, and I'll show you something interesting. Screen share your map and go to Stonehenge, because it's very relevant to what you were just talking about. You may or may not know what I'm going to talk about, but
so just for people listening, I am now screen sharing.
You're screen sharing.
I hope those of you going down the motorway on Spotify really appreciate this. So
go to roughly Stonehenge, between Stonehenge and Amesbury.
I've gone too far, haven't
I?
I?
Go to Amesbury and find the famous Stonehenge.
Do you know what? It's
you can see it there, bottom left.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got it. It's above Old Sarum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amesbury.
Right.
So we're looking just to the west of Amesbury, aren't we?
Yeah, right. Stop there.
So
stop
there it is.
Stop.
Yeah,
right.
got it. Yep.
Now go to aerial view. So not OS maps. Go to aerial view. Exactly the location you're looking at right now. Go to satellite. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Now just scroll to your right or to your east ever so slightly. Right, keep going and stop. Now zoom in just like one layer. Just zoom in once. Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you see those clumps of trees?
Yeah. So for the people listening that aren't getting this amazing visual experience, there are clumps of trees amongst barrows by the looks of it. Yes.
Yeah. Now forget the barrows and pretend there is no A303 there. All those clumps of trees right there are positioned based on a map of the Battle of Trafalgar. They are ships.
Oh, wow. I never realised that.
Now, a lot of the A303 went through some of those, and people have tried to work out at what point of the battle that was, but they are the Nile clumps, I think they're called. And they're supposedly that's supposedly at a point in the time of the battle that all those are ships. There's a lot. There's a lot out there on it, but somewhere there's an old sign as well descripting that. But
yeah. So I mean, and also the wood for the Victory came from a wood near where I live, up at Frilford.
Oh, really?
Which is now Millet's Farm, and you can walk around the modern day site where they've got a wood that they've created and see bits of wood there. So fantastic. So, but it's a bit like Trigger's broom, isn't it? The wood's been replaced so many times. Sorry, John. Sorry.
I was just going to say we have two pubs in my bit of London, which is I believe where Lady Hamilton used to live here, who was Nelson's mistress, I think, and so there is a pub named after Lady Hamilton. There's also a pub called Tapping the Admiral, and I think that's this sort of this tradition apparently that the sailors on the way back, the surviving sailors on their way back from the Battle of Trafalgar, because he was preserved in that barrel of brandy. Either they were sort of some sort of bizarre act of respect. They would kind of take a tot of rum out of the barrel with the corpse of Nelson. It was either respect or they were just terribly, terribly thirsty and they'd run out of any other source of brandy. But apparently, the sailors would. This may well be apocryphal. I don't know, but there's this legend that sailors would take a tot of rum out of the barrel that Nelson's body was in and drink it to,
Rather them than me, to be perfectly frank. It's kind of, it's like, it's okay. Well, I mean, if it's a straight choice between that or Tesco's brandy, then obviously you're going to take it out of the Nelson barrel, but right. So, wow, this is the longest podcast we've ever done. So let's be very quick with comments. So this was I'm going to take the comments from episode 21, which is the last time we were together. For those that haven't watched it, episode 22 was with Kate. Definitely worth a watch. She's fantastic. I'm so glad that we managed to get her on. So you've had a comment, Paul, from British Long Barrows. So this is at British Long Barrows on YouTube. It sounds awfully official. Paul, you are a storyteller and a damn good one at that. Looking forward to seeing more of the East Lynne Hedley. As am I. I've got to go and see
I ranted.
Yes, unlike you. So we've had I'm going to have to, we've got 60 comments here. So I'm going to say one from Oliver Hunter. We watched video of the black and white BBC footage of those relics. So that's the Lynmouth disaster. We don't get any more. A large CRT TV bolted to a metal trolley. Oh, those were the days. So let's have a look. I'm scrolling down a lot of comments here. Here we are. So at Brooks and Tor, I really enjoyed the chat. Exmoor is one of my favourite places. So many interesting places to explore, from abandoned farms to old workings such as the mineral line, down to the interesting historic harbour at Watchet and the breathtaking views of Dunkery, which is Dunkery Beacon, or Selworthy Beacon, and Webber's Post. So looking forward to the next one. So Brooks on Tour. So I've just realised that's Brooks on Tour, not Brooks and Tour.
They
thank
came
you
to your.
So much.
They're a lovely couple that came to your.
Yeah, they came to the exhibition. They came to the exhibition. I remember they came. It was just before we shut the exhibition.
Yes.
Lovely couple, and I'm friends with their son as well. Stuart Bridger, great video. We'll have to try the cheese cutting in half game. Oh, yeah, I need to do that. So good. The Rising Sun in Lynmouth is one of the greatest pubs in the country. We've walked many of the places mentioned on the East Lynne. Brings back memories. We have Linley's 360, who is going to be on this podcast, putting quite a lot of comments in there, which is great. So I recommend videos. He did 2 videos on Table Mountain, which I highly recommend. We have someone called Paul Timlett.
No,
they're not seagulls, they're just gulls. And he's asking for 5 guineas for the ornithology lesson. So there we are, RSPB heaven there. At SUAS News, Jack Hargreaves was required viewing when bunking school in the early 80s because there was nothing else on. We have various comments
that
about.
Was one of the inspirations for that Oxtrove walk I did. Jack Hargreaves video. He did. He called it, I think, the King's Way or the King's Track. He didn't use the word, but one of his is it called Old Country TV shows had featured that track that I walked along. It looked completely different in his day. But and it was also winter when I did it versus summer. When he did it.
So we have a comment from someone called Tweedy Outdoors. Never heard of them. Let's have a look. Malcolm Richardson 3881 regarding seagulls. He empathizes with Paul. He finds your videos well constructed, imaginative, and invariably interesting. So yeah, I think they stimulate everyone's curiosity.
Paul, what's your favourite comment you've ever received?
Oh,
Is that a very difficult question to answer?
that's a very difficult question. Do you know, I had one the other day, and I said this is one comment of the year, and it's only January. I'm going to try and find that. Hedley, carry on. I'll come back to you in a second with an answer for that, because there is an answer.
Okay, so
hang on,
we have.
Stop. I found it. Oh, sorry, I found it already. This is comment of the year 2024 already. Are you ready? You need to say this or hear this in a Victoria Wood voice.
Go on then.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Not bleakly, not meekly. Beat me on the bottom with a white wick weekly.
Oh, brilliant!
That's my favourite comment ever.
A classic song as well. Yeah. So, click here to enlarge your. No, that's an advert. Right. I don't know where Okay. Sorry. So David Bellani, Hi Paul and Hedley, another great podcast. Fascinating to hear about the Lynmouth disaster. I've been there, but I only really know through old photos and a bit of cine of the funicular railway. That's good. WC21. Moving on.
Yay!
Yeah. So he's put a nice comment about promoting ourselves, and he obviously promotes himself as a YouTube antiquarian, which describes what he does. Again, I've repeat it. Follow WC21 UK Productions Limited.
Everybody should.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, but I tell you what, it's worth following. So
I still don't know what it means. I still actually haven't figured out.
I do. I question
it. I always feel like it's rude to ask now. I like the mystique of. I have no idea what the channel.
I'll tell you what. So I don't know whether it's public knowledge or not. So what I would do, John, is after we stop the recording, stay on the call and I'll tell you.
Okay.
So
I want to know. I like the fact that it's sort of, one of life's great mysteries.
James Walks in History 3848. Follow this guy as well.
Yeah, he's got some.
He's good.
Videos. Yeah,
he's
nice.
I love his hill fort videos because I run the UK Hill Forts group on Facebook, and James posts more of your hill forts videos in that group. So yeah, okay. I'm just literally going to read out names now. So we've got lovely comments from Ian Fleming 6027, Neil Buckle 9564. Okay, so I will read this. So he mentions the hot penny throwing in Honiton.
Oh, yes.
And the Jack Hargreaves program was originally Out of Town on Southern ITV, later Old Country.
Yeah.
In the early Channel 4 days. He said there's a YouTube channel run by his former producer, Dave Knowles. Isn't he a Telegraph military? Mate, it's another day, Dave Knowles. Is currently rerunning Channel 4 programs. So he said he would sometimes end his program by turning to practice the Aunt Sally skittles, which is what I said about Oxfordshire pubs, which is the game that they play there. Yeah. So nice comment from Anne Fieldhouse 2020. Not going to read it out because we're going on and we've got a lot of comments. Long Keith Diablo 8812. Barry Conway shouts. I will read this out. He shouts Tweedy, Tweedy, Tweedy. So, someone who really wanted you on here. It's great.
Yeah. Checks in the post, Barry.
Yeah. Someone called P. Whitewick. Davey 941. Thank you very much. And finally, Jeff Laufer 3205 says, I hate it when someone eats my sandwiches. And that's a reference to your virtual sandwiches being stolen by someone on YouTube stealing your stuff.
Fair.
There we go. I'm losing my voice.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, it took me a while to sort of piece that together.
Me too.
There,
Me too, to be fair, but I understand what it means. Yes, I get it. I got that.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, the story there is don't nick other people's footage for YouTube. Right. Don't nick other people's pictures for any other platform. And if you do, quote them for it. And this wine is really strong.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I watched your the torment you suffered over that. I'm blessed by the fact that nobody seems to want to reuse my footage. Why could that be?
It's a rare thing. It's a rare thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
So-
Can't keep the horizon straight. You should make just worse footage, Paul. That would solve that problem. If you had terrible shaky camera work with bad lighting, then you wouldn't be suffering this problem.
Wouldn't have that problem.
So before we go, John, aka Tweedy, can you list me your YouTube channels, please, for the listeners?
Well, I mean, the only ones that matter are Tweedy Outdoors and Tweedy Pubs. If you like outdoorsy stuff, walking, wild camping, bit of ancient history, bit of outdoor cooking, Tweedy Outdoors. Tweedy Pubs, hopefully self-explanatory. It's mostly London-based pubs.
Yep.
I have two more that are sort of wine-focused, but they're kind of not going anywhere. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth promoting them. But
Yeah.
the two that matter, Tweedy Pubs, Tweedy Outdoors.
Yeah.
If
I
you're
love
into
Tweedy
angry
Pubs.
things and you don't mind it being kind of besmirched with tweed, then
Yeah.
take a look.
Besmirched with tweed, and
I
on
don't know
that
if that's the right
elegant
word.
phrase, we will close. Everyone, follow Tweedy Outdoors, follow Tweedy Pubs. Great video on the oldest pub in London, and I think we will close it there. So thank you very much for listening to episode 23. Got it right again. And please like, subscribe, share. What is it YouTubers say? Like, subscribe, share, comment.
Smash the notification button or something like that.
Smash, whatever.
Smash it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks,
and
folks.
we will see you in the next one. Bye bye.